All right, you can do this. You got this, man. You're a professional. You've interviewed people before. He's just a regular guy, just a regular dude. Don't picture him as a senator. You're good looking. You know what you're doing. You're a professional host. Picture him as just your friend, your friendly uncle. Just, you can do this, man. You can do it. Yes, I can do it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go do it right now. Oh my God. Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Think Bigger. My name's Jason Stum, your host on the show that inspires you to think beyond today and tomorrow to help you achieve your biggest ambitions. And if you've been with us ever since episode 0, we made a promise to you that not only would we bring in guests from inside the automotive industry, but we'd also introduce you to people from outside the automotive industry that maybe you've never heard of before. Well, today is one of those days. I'm privileged, I'm honored. I'm going to be joined by State Senator Mike Connelly. And Senator Connelly and I are going to talk about how he uses a think bigger mindset to solve problems in the community and connect with his constituency. I'm so excited to bring you this episode, guys. Let's go find the senator and start thinking bigger. Well, Senator Connelly, do I call you Senator or can I call you Mike?
Just call me Mike.
Okay,
please.
Mike,
Yeah.
good. That's a little easier. I won't be as nervous if I can use your first name and be like,
no problem
not talking
at all.
to a big deal state senator here. So thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
So I don't know of too many kids who grew up saying, you know, when I grow up, I want to be a state senator. Take us back, a little bit through your path. How did you end up where you are today? Where did it all start?
I was firmly convinced that I was going to have to choose between being the point guard for the Chicago Bulls or the shortstop for the Chicago White Sox. It was going to be a difficult choice in life, but I'd have to make that choice. It didn't materialize. I practiced law. I was a prosecutor in Cook County, Illinois, and Chicago for a while, and married, had 3 kids, coaching every little league team you can imagine, and girls softball and the like. And there was a local neighborhood issue where the local city council, I thought, went completely off the hinges, and it just sparked a motivation to run for office. But I never woke up one day saying, gee, wouldn't it be wonderful to be a state senator? It never crossed my mind.
What was the problem that you didn't think was handled well that inspired you to get involved?
There was a development issue in our town, and one of the village board members actually basically said my neighborhood really didn't count because we didn't vote much in local elections, so your voice really doesn't matter. And I thought, everybody's voice matters, and it was the type of, I can understand people voting one way or another on an issue, but to make that kind of comment was so unrepresentative of how I thought our elected officials should be, and it prompted my Irishness to take over, and I ran for office as a result.
And so then you've then gone through, that's more of a localized, government situation, and then you've progressed your way through up into where you are today. What kind of obstacles and challenges have you run into, as a politician coming up through the ranks?
Well, oftentimes you hear, it's not your turn, Mike. You shouldn't be thinking of running for this office because it's not your turn. And that's something I want everyone listening to this show to understand. Opportunity presents itself, and you better seize it, because opportunities come and go. And so there was an opportunity to run for the State House, and for a flicker, I hesitated, and then I realized this opportunity may never come again. And I felt like the experience I had, I could apply it at the state level in a real positive way. So I seized it, and what I took from it was, whether I win or lose, I'm gonna run hard, I'm gonna try to win, and if I win, I'm gonna do the best I can as long as the people will allow me to. So the opportunity presented itself, and I seized it, I guess.
Well, no, that's really important, because as we have guests on the show, on our Think Bigger show, there's a recurring theme, and it's something that you just described, is that sometimes obstacles present themselves, and oftentimes we just want to stop and say it's too big, it's too much. So somebody's saying, Mike, not your time, that's an obstacle, right? But the big thinkers of this world, they encounter the obstacle, but then they find a way around it, they power their way over it, they do something to overcome that obstacle. So that's just another great example of big thinking your way past somebody, because you could have let those whispers that it's not your time, stop you from pursuing your ambitions.
And it's happening at every business in the country, in the world. You've got people who are ahead of, or a little higher up in the chain saying, oh, let's not rock the boat there. You've got to find, your opportunities present themselves only a few times, so I seized it.
So what are as a state senator, what are some of the biggest challenges you face, on a day-to-day basis where you have to apply maybe a think bigger mindset in a governmental setting?
Well, for my case, I'm in the Republican Party, and in Illinois, we're in a super minority status. So if a constituent from Naperville comes to me and says, Mike, I've got this idea for a bill, I know I have to work across the aisle to get things passed. And without sounding arrogant, I have a niche where I've passed more bills than any other senator in the past 2 years by knowing that when I get an idea, I go find a Democratic sponsor with me to work together to get something accomplished. It would be nice to have more than enough Republican votes to get things passed, but it also creates an environment where you must be a collaborator if you're going to be an effective member of the state Senate. And so that it's an obstacle, but I also find it a challenge that I welcome. So.
Well, and I think it would be rewarding as well, knowing that you don't have a whole row of allies here to just kind of get through, to have to go across the aisle, reach across, and say, hey, let's work on something together. To me, I don't know. I've never been a politician. Probably never will be. But I would think that would feel. Maybe you never know. I think that would feel rewarding. Do you find it when that happens?
I do, and it's rewarding too when you come up with. I had a bill last year. It's called the Right to Try Act, and you talk about think bigger. The FDA basically, it takes 10 years to get an experimental medication to the marketplace, and a group came to me in 25 other states. And basically said, we're not going to wait for the FDA to go through 3 levels of approval. It's really based out of the Dallas Buyers Club movie. So today in Illinois and 26 other states, if a medication passes level 1 FDA approval, which then gets you to clinical trial status, you don't have to wait and get a doctor to fill out 100 hours worth of paperwork. If the pharmaceutical company and the doctor says this will treat your ALS, they can treat you on the spot. And so it's thinking outside the box. It's getting out of your comfort zone. It'd be very easy to say, well, the FDA is not going to be happy about this. But on the other hand, I've had people whose spouses had ALS, and there is a medication at AbbVie or at some other pharmaceutical company in Illinois that can, if not stop it, at least slow it down to improve their quality of life. And that's the most rewarding part of the job, is to find these opportunities and collaborate with everybody from Chicago to Naperville to Carbondale and make things happen.
Yeah. So obviously people come to you as a representative of the public and approach you with ideas, with problems that might need to be solved. And with 3 millennials, you probably know this already and are very well aware that social media just are ways to communicate with each other and with people we don't necessarily know. The doors are wide open. How has the social media revolution impacted what you do on a daily basis, but also how has it allowed you to connect with your constituents?
It's completely changed the dynamic of politics and in representing people. I'm on Facebook. My 3 millennials say Facebook's for old people, so I'm on Facebook because I'm old. So I have 4,000 friends plus, I don't know, 4,500 or whatever. I know probably 300 or 400 of them. But that being said, it allows you to it allows you to message to people directly. And they message back directly. I've had opportunities when I was in the House of Representatives. We had 4 or 5 of us were online on Facebook debating a bill that we were debating live at that time. And I remember that the Chicago Tribune, their Facebook post was like, there are 6 members of the General Assembly in the House that are debating a bill on Facebook. It was like it was just at the infancy of this revolution, if you will. But people were literally commenting as we were debating.
Interesting.
And so you talk about having a real interactive relationship with constituents. I mean, it was in real time, pretty substantial bill, and people were giving one opinion, others were giving others. And at the end of the day, I think people feel more connected to you because of that. Time and time again, I'll be out in the public, and they'll say, "Hey, Senator Connelly, nice to meet you." And I'll say, "Nice to meet you." We're Facebook friends. And I'll be like, that's right, and I will kind of look at give me the name again.
Yeah.
I get it. And so even when they disagree with you, the fact that they can have that interactive relationship and direct contact, it means a lot. And it has changed, completely changed. I think for the better. I think there's some that are still, reluctant to get on there. They're afraid. And we talked earlier about that you have to be cautious. You can't get on there and say something that, as we all know, it's there immemorial. It's never
Yes.
going away. So you do have to be somewhat cautious, but sometimes, we're kind of taught by our communications people to leave a question at the end.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sure.
What are your thoughts? Let me hear what you think. So I think it's changed, personally, I think it's changed politics for the better. I think some use it in a way to, should I say, divide?
Sure.
And there are others who use it as a way to collaborate. And I
Right.
think the collaborators outweigh the dividers 10-1 on Facebook.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You're always going to have your internet trolls, your people who kind of hide behind this anonymity of a social platform where they don't have to be themselves, so they can say mean, terrible things.
Right.
But for the most part, I think we all just want to have an open dialogue, and we deal with something similar a lot when with reviews of car dealerships. Sometimes somebody doesn't have a good experience. So they go on to Facebook and they go on to Google or Yelp and they leave, sometimes a pretty hurtful review of their experience.
Right.
But when you're able to then reply to that as a dealer principal or as a general manager and respond in a thoughtful way, saying, hey, really sorry that happened, more often than not, they instantly turn around.
Right.
And they're almost apologetic that they were so, negative because they just didn't realize somebody was there to listen to them.
Yeah.
So you see that playing out just like in the situation you described where, yes, somebody can disagree. However, at the same time, hey, I'm heard, we can agree to disagree, and we at least have a pretty good understanding of what we're trying to talk about.
That happens all the time. It happens all the time. And then, the next issue, they're on there saying, hey, I agree with you on this one. Look at that. We've come together finally, so that happens. Another thing social media does too is the ability to tag. I get tagged all the time.
Yeah.
And I love to tell the story. A couple years ago, I'm looking at my feed and there's, you were tagged by somebody I didn't know. And it was a couple of women from Wheaton, Illinois, whose husbands have early onset Alzheimer's, and they were coming down to Springfield for Alzheimer's Awareness Day, which I didn't even know they were coming. I didn't know there was Alzheimer's Awareness Day. And I kind of got wind of it. I got a hold of them. I took them around the Capitol, and I'm not saying it was this little incident, but it's kind of built into a crescendo where they've been to Congress in Washington testifying, these two ladies
wow.
from Wheaton, and it really was basically tagging me and saying, we're going to see our state senator, Michael G. Connelly, in Springfield today. I didn't know they were coming. There was no meeting set up, and it's really kind of blossomed into an advocacy group for those whose loved ones are suffering from Alzheimer's. So there's so much power behind that if it's used properly.
Yeah, and that's another thing we talk about when we talk about Think Bigger and taking the example of the two women that you just described by tagging you, is that if you want to become a big thinker, is you have to let people know what you want to accomplish in life or with whatever your particular mission is. So by them tagging you, saying, here's what we're trying to accomplish, because you never know who's listening.
Exactly.
You jumped right in there in a very personal way, and were able then to help them, accomplish something, and then that, spurred them on and continue them on to their journey. So, letting people know what you want to accomplish can help you get the things that you want out of life.
And of course now their networks, which are enormous, are also now my networks.
Right.
So from a political standpoint, it's no different than in business. You have no idea what network is behind this person or these people. And so it just builds your brand, it builds your network and your capability or ability to communicate your message about your service, about your product to people that you didn't know before, or they didn't know you before.
Yeah. So taking let's go away from the happy fun stuff. And
Oh.
let's go to something. Well, there's something, and this is probably a question that's more personal towards me, although I'm sure it will relate to other people. Is as a politician, especially in a minority situation, you're bound to deal with conflict on a somewhat regular basis. And so whether for anybody watching, whether it's conflict, at where we work, a conflict at home, or just conflict in general, how have you learned to deal with conflict in a positive way and maybe overcome some of those obstacles as you approach them?
It's a great question. There's conflict all the time in politics, to be sure. What I have found is, particularly when it's a very strong disagreement from one side of the aisle to the other, or even amongst my own caucus, is kind of let the other side and not embrace, their opinion, but respect their opinion and show that you respect that opinion that is causing this friction. Doesn't mean you have to change your position, but show that respect. It typically always diffuses that conflict, and then maybe even try to figure out a way where some of what the other person wants can be incorporated into what you want to do to go forward. I mean, it is the legislative process, is conflict. You start here, and then someone comes in and says, over my dead body, Senator, I'm not going to let it be seen. And I'm like, well, what is your concern? And then, well, if we take this may or shall and make it a may, will that change opinion? Well, of course it will. Well, what if I move this out, which means the county of Cook is no longer part of this bill? Well, that takes away a lot of the opposition. You have to embrace don't avoid it. Don't try to hide from it, because you have to encounter it. But encounter it in a way, if you encounter it with more conflict, you have ruin. If you encounter it and embrace it with some form of, not compromise, but at least respect, you can overcome that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. That's good. That is good information right there. Definitely got to keep that in the back pocket in case I need it.
It's my
Not
life.
saying I need it, I just might need it sometime. I don't know. So what's the most satisfying part about being a state senator?
It's funny. You don't appreciate how diverse Illinois is until you get to the General Assembly. I mean, we have farmers, central and southern Illinois. We have, inner city Democrats. We have suburban Republicans. We have such a diverse state, and yet we all come together for 6 months a year. And I'm working on bills. I took a bill from Brandon Phelps, who's from Harrisburg. Harrisburg, I think, is closer to Paducah, Kentucky than St. Louis, Missouri. It's so there's such a wide variety of people and backgrounds, and the fact that we come together 99% of the time to make things positive for Illinois is tremendously rewarding. It's selfishly too, as a state senator, to meet people like here
like
at
me.
Lunch. Well, like you, of course, and these wonderful people taking our pictures today. But being able to see this new generation come together, this new workforce here at Launch, it's exhilarating. It also makes me feel a little bit. I was told I was from an older demographic.
Oh, interesting.
The other day, which was somewhat disappointing. But I called my parents and said, "Look, I'm now old like you." But that's exciting because I'm going to play a part in hopefully playing a part in making Illinois a better place for my kids, their children, and then I step aside and I can look back and say I did the best I could. And I'll tell you, a day doesn't go by where I don't thank the Lord. This is a great privilege. Come visit me in the Capitol. I'll give you a backstage tour, and it's just it's a humbling experience, to be sure. It really is.
So, Mike, for everybody who's watching right now, they're watching because they want to develop their think bigger mindset. They have ideas in their head that they want to get out and to have them become a real thing. What advice would you give for somebody who's looking to get on this think bigger mindset?
When I think bigger, I'm old enough to remember when cell phones were the size of a shoebox and everyone was so excited. Look at this big thing I can put up next to my head, and it's wonderful. No one in their right mind thought there would be phones fitting in the palm of your hand that would allow you to basically run your entire life through something that small. But there were engineers at Alcatel-Lucent that were thinking in those terms 20 years ago. So you have to think, you see a product, you see a service, think outside the box. I know it sounds cliches. How can it be better? How can we do it better? And opportunities will come, seize them, push. Don't let someone tell you, well, it's really not your time to do that. And then another thing that seems to have worked, at least for me and for others, is be kind to other people. Because you never know who is around the corner that you were kind to that could help you take your idea, your dream to another level. You just don't know who you're talking to at Starbucks. You don't cut somebody off when you get on the highway, because you never know. You may be seeing them at a meeting that next hour, and they're going to be the people to determine whether or not you're going to have that investment capital to take your idea to market. So always be kind, but think outside the box and think long term as well.
No, I like it. I think those are all great answers. Senator Connelly, thank you so much for joining me here on Think Bigger today. Truly, honestly, a privilege and an honor to have you. I wish we had more time to sit down and talk some more. You're a very interesting guy. I love the stories that you shared with us today, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
My
That's
pleasure.
Great.
All right, ready?
This guy would kill me. You know, he's being kind. I could tell. With these
Are you
hands, he would
even
just go,
filming that? Well, there you go. I did it. I interviewed a real-life senator, and I thought that went really well, and I think he actually kind of liked me. So thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Be sure to check in every Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Autotainment Network, where we can start tuning in and thinking bigger.